All right, guys. So today we're going to be going over sketched features. And so this are features we're going to create just by using sketches and extrude or revolve. We're not going to be using the place features like holes or anything like that. So anything that we can start with a sketch to draw the geometry. So some simple rules here. We want to keep our sketches simple. We want to do one thing at a time. We don't want to stack multiple things. And we want to use sketches one time only. We don't want to reuse sketches. So we create some sketches, we do something with it, and we move on. We want to use good constraints that are based on the design intent that we've defined. So if things are supposed to be centered, we want to make constraints that will allow those things to stay centered. And we want to use meaningful termination. So not just extruding to a certain distance, but extruding through all or to a surface and things like that. All right, so kind of the steps in making a sketch. First, create the sketch. Create the sketch, pick either the work plane or the origin plane or the face that you're going to sketch on. That's the first thing. Second thing, relate something on the sketch to either the origin, if this is the first thing you're doing, or to existing geometry somehow. And part of keeping the sketch simple is we don't want to use over 6 pieces of geometry. So we want to use less than 6 pieces of geometry if we can, no more than 8 pieces of geometry. So lines, arcs, any of that, that's too complex. We want to keep our things simple. And then we'll go through and add constraints and then add dimensions. So see, dimensions is all the way down here. I know that when you create the geometry, you can add in the dimensions as you're creating it. Don't do that. Wait until you're down here. After you've already got all the geometry in and you added your constraints, then add your dimensions and then do something with it. So extrude or revolve or sweep or whatever. And then create a new, and then kind of repeat the whole process for the next sketch. Don't go back in and reuse a sketch again. It turns them off for a reason, because that sketch is meant to be with that feature. All right. So let's look at the first piece. So here is a pretty simple piece. So let's break this down based on design intent. So what can we think here? All right, so it's telling us this part is symmetrical. So it means that this notch needs to be the same as that notch. This needs to be centered with that distance on the sides. This one is important to go from this edge. This notch is from that edge, but kind of the size of this thing right here is important. And so that kind of tells us the order of things. We can't draw this feature down here until we do this feature here, until we get this cut out here. So what steps can we take to draw this out? So I will probably start by, maybe drawing, oops, not that. Other rectangle. Maybe I'll start by drawing that. So my first sketch would be that rectangle. I'd dimension it. So I'd center this somehow. Since it's centered on it's kind of the part symmetric, I could make my origin point, I can make an origin point be there. I can make the origin point be there. I can make the origin point be the center of the rectangle, whatever. As long as it's on that symmetry line, it really doesn't matter. But because this isn't symmetrical up and down, I'd probably put the origin either here at the top or here at the bottom. I usually like the top, so I'll probably put it there. So put the origin point there. So I'll use a midpoint constraint from this line to that point. That way I'll line it up, and then I'll just put in the 2 and the 3. So now, second sketch. So do that, extrude it my 1/4 inch thick. Great. Actually, let's just jump over and do that. So create a sketch here. I'm just going to create a rectangle. Just create the rectangle. Don't worry about where it is. We're going to move it around. So I'm going to tell midpoint, that line to that point. Now I can tell it dimension 2, 3. And then finish the sketch, extrude it, 0.25. Ta-da. I have that main piece now. So now what's my second sketch going to be? Okay. Do I want to do this one? Because I can get to this one now. Or do I want to do these? I don't know. Which one do I think is more critical to the function of the part? Is these more critical, or is this? And I kind of like to work that way, of kind of the most important things first to the least important things. Kind of the things that are probably not going to change as much first, and the things that have more of a chance of changing later on. So I'm going to work on these. And because these are basically the same thing, doing the second copy of the same thing doesn't really break the rule, even though it is going to be 8 lines kind of total, but these are going to be exactly the same, because I can make this line up with that line, and I can make those 2 lines be equal length. I can make those 2 lines be equal length. So then I can really just kind of concern myself with dimensioning one side of it. The other one's just going to kind of do what it does. Later on, if we're going to do something like a mirror, I could just do this one and then mirror it over there. But here we're just doing a sketch. But because these two are related, if this one goes away, this one's going to go away. If this one changes, this one will need to change. So I can do those together. I would not do these two together, because this could change separately than this. And so I don't want to do those two things on the same sketch. So let's do that. So go here, create a sketch on there. And then I'm going to start from the edge, because I know that I want that to be on the edge. Make those 2 tops equal length. Make those 2 equal length. And then I can use my collinear to line up these 2 tops. And so now I can just grab points. So grab a corner, drag it around, and make sure it behaves the way you want it to behave. If it's behaving correctly, now it's time for dimensions. If I want to do that and things were going wonky, then maybe it's time to do something else. And also that's why I like to use rectangles, because if I did lines, I'd have to either make sure I got it locked in to be perpendicular, because I could easily just do that. But now when I grab the corner, it's doing this. Things are not locked horizontal and vertical or perpendicular to each other. So now I have to add those constraints also. But by doing the rectangle, it does all that kind of for me. So these 2 are here. They're moving correctly. That's good. And check the dimensions. So 1/2 inch down. And the bottom edge is 1 inch down, and it's a 1/4 inch deep. So that's 1/2 inch. And from that edge to there is my 1 inch, and there's a 1/4 inch deep. And you can see the other one is fully constrained also. So I can finish that sketch, extrude, and I can tell these that I want them to be through all. And it's kind of going up, and so I just flip it. And now it's going to flip it and do a cut. Automatically knows, okay, I'm going into the part, I'm using all, it's going to be a cut. And I can say, okay. Now I'm just going to get ready, create another sketch. Now I can work down here. So now I'll draw in these, oops. I can draw in these cuts and kind of do the same thing. And they're 1/2 inch in and 1 inch down from there. So I'm going to start my rectangle from this corner and come up. Again, the size doesn't matter. You don't even have to worry about them getting approximately the right size. Just kind of get them in there, because we'll constrain them as we go. So I can tell it equal length, that one to that one, and that one to that one. Grab a corner, move it around. They're behaving correctly. Good. Dimension 1 inch, 1/2 inch. Finish, extrude, all, flip it, and okay. So now that's there. Now I need the center one. So I'm going to draw in that center rectangle. I want it centered, 3/4 from the top, 1 inch high. So create a sketch here. And again, I want to draw a rectangle. But which rectangle should I draw? Should I use the 2-point rectangle, the 3-point rectangle, or the center rectangle if I want it to be centered? I'm going to use the center rectangle because that already gives me a center point. So I start here and go out. I have that. Now I can use my constraints. I can use a vertical constraint to line up that center point with my origin point, which is the center of the part also. So the part can move up and down. I can move, it'll stay symmetric, which is what I want. So I want that to be 3/4 inch down, 1 inch high. What was it, 1/2 inch wide? Yep. Okay. And now I can say through all, flip, and there we go. So now I have this part. And you can see down here in my history, it's sketch, feature, sketch, feature, sketch, feature, sketch, feature. Kind of the way I want things to be. Make a sketch, do something with it. Make a sketch, do something with it. Now if I want to go back and change this, I can go back to say I want to change the overall size. I can go back to that first sketch. I want to make that 4 inches. And you can see this still stayed in the middle. And because these were dimensions from the outside, they moved out. If I went in and told here and told that to be 2, or I guess 1, now that would go in and adjust there. If I really cared about the width of this piece, maybe when I did that, instead of doing a dimension here, I could do a dimension here. If I really care about that staying 1 inch wide, and now when I change the width, you see that centerpiece stays that 1 inch. And so the dimensions that are on the drawings are the dimensions that someone has decided are important. So use those dimensions that are on the drawing. Don't say, oh, I can do, I can do this one instead of that 1/2 inch. It's the same thing. No, it's not, because when it changes, it's going to have a different effect on the part. Okay. So dimensions on the drawings are there for a reason. Use those dimensions. You notice I did not use this 0.75 because that's just kind of there to position this rectangle in order to tell you that it's centered. But we already knew that because of the symmetry line and just because of the design intent that, yeah, the way this is set up, that rectangle's gonna need to be in the center of the part. So let's just put it there. All right, questions on this one? Nope, all right, good. So now we have this other piece. So I'm gonna save this. And I'm pretty bad about naming things. So I'm gonna turn that off. And I've gone into the settings in Fusion, or in preferences. And I've changed under design history, just to capture design history all the time, not to prompt and not to do the direct modeling. We need that history now. So make sure you turn that on. All right, so now we have this one. A little bit more complicated. And so let's look at the design intent of it. So we've got that. Anything that's sticking out that's really design intent-y? All right, there's one here that this face, there's no dimension for how wide it is or how wide this is, but it tells us that that lines up to this face. And so that's the kind of the obvious piece of design intent from this is this face has to be lined up with this face. So how do we do that? And how are we going to create this? So how could I do my sketch? What would I do for my my first sketch. I mean, I could do just a box and extrude it the full height, or I could do a box and extrude it just to here, and then draw another box and extrude it up and things. Or I could draw, you know, this, a little L shape, because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. I could draw that and extrude out. So that's kind of the overall shape. So maybe I'll do that. But lots of different ways. I could draw a rectangle here, extrude it that way. Another rectangle here, extrude it that way, or a rectangle on top and extrude it up. Doesn't matter, but look at the dimensions. If I did rectangle on the bottom and extrude it up, I could go up this here, this dimension here. But then how would I get to this one? Because I'd have to kind of do some math of 2 minus 1 1/4. If I do this, now I have all my dimensions there that I can work off of. So I'll probably just do that. So get a sketch, go that way. And so I'm going to use a line and kind of make sure it snaps in. If it doesn't snap, not a big deal. I'm going to make it really out of whack there, just kind of to show the point. But I can just come back through with horizontal, vertical, and make those all line up. And so now when I grab the points, everything moves correctly. Let's stick this over here so we can kind of keep an eye on it. All right. So what size is this? If I go dimension, that's 2 inches by 1 inch by 3 inches by 1 1/4. All right, that looks good. Finish, extrude, and that's going to go 2. There we go. So there's my little box. So now I need to do my cuts. So which cut first, this one or this one? So top cut or bottom cut, which one first? Yeah, I'm going to do the top cut first because the bottom one has to land with the top. If I did this one, I don't know how wide to make this. So I'm going to create a sketch. Again, I could do it on this face or on this face. If I did it here, I could just draw a line up and then extrude back my 1/4 inch. But if I pick here, I can draw my 1/4 inch by 1/2 inch rectangle and extrude down to this face. So maybe I'll do that. Pick there, do a rectangle, dimension it, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, finish it, extrude there. And now I'm going to say for my extents, I'm going to say to object. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pick that face. See, it's going there. And now what happens if I go in and I change my size of this one, and I make that 3/4, that cut's still going to go down to that face. If I made that cut just go down 3/4, just the difference between 2 and 1 1/4, and I did this, that would have been up here. Watch, if I'd done that, it would have been there. And that could have, just to show you, so even if you extrude and you just pick that point, it's still doing a distance at that. So it looks right, but when I go back in and I change this dimension, it doesn't adjust. So I want to make sure that I tell that to go to object, and I pick that object. So now it's always going to go extrude down to that face. Okay, so now we have this cutout here. Again, a couple ways to do it. One, I can draw here and then extrude down and then have it stop 1/2 inch from the bottom. So we can do that. I could draw on this side. I could draw 1/2 over, 1/2 up, extrude back. Or I could draw on this face line up there and go that way. So I'll kind of do all three for you. So let's try it all three ways. I'm going to go from top, rectangle, and how do I make this line up with that? I'm going to use Collinear. Pick that line and pick that line. Now I can tell it my 1/2 inch, extrude, and I'm going to use that to object again. Now I'm going to pick the bottom because that dimension is coming up from the bottom, and then for the offset, I want to put my 1/2 inch. Oops, it needs to go negative 1/2 inch because it's going into the object. So now I know what I do. It's always going to leave that 1/2 inch at the bottom. So if I change the size of this, you can see stayed the 1/2 inch. If I change this measurement, you can see it goes with it. All right, so that was off the top. If I go off the side here, I can pick here, and I can draw a rectangle there. Then I can dimension my 1/2 inch, and I can dimension the 1/2 inch down here, and I can extrude from here to object, and I can pick that face. So same thing. Or I could create my sketch here, rectangle, but now how do I get that to line up with here? Let me make sure. Again, constraints first. So I need this to line up with that. How do I do that? How can I make this line up with this? It's easy if it's on the sketch plane, but that's not on my current sketch plane. How do I make it on my sketch plane? I'm gonna go in, go to create, project or include, and project, or just hit P. Now I can pick that edge and say okay. Now I can grab that over and drag it. Now it's going to lock to that edge. Now I can add that dimension. Now when I extrude, I'm going to go back into it. So I'm going to say negative 0.5. And just to show that, yeah, it's still going to move, let's go back to the sketch, make that 1 inch. You can see that moved with it because this edge here is being generated from that edge there. Okay, so bring that back there. So 3 different ways to do this cut here. All 3 of them work as long as they're able to adjust when we change the other things. So let's save that. And let's move on to the next one. So we have this piece here. So it's a round piece. How are we going to do this? So because it's stacked like this, it's easy to do as 3 cylinders, right? I could do a 1/2 inch cylinder, 3/4 inch, then create a dimension or create a new sketch here, another circle, diameter that, extrude it that far, then another circle, diameter that, extrude it that far. If the dimensions are stacked like this, that's easy to do. However, if the dimensions are not like that, I did not have this dimension here. Let's say I had this dimension here, so that would be 1.25 from there to there. Now doing a revolve might be better because now I could draw this section there. So I could draw this, giving those diameters, those lengths, and then I could revolve it. And so I'm going to model it based on this to kind of let you see what I'm talking about. Because drawing a circle and extruding it, that's a piece of cake. Let's do something a little bit more. All right. Come on. There we go. All right, so first I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to create it there. Doesn't matter which way. And I'm going to sketch out that orange sketch that I did. And I'm just kind of throwing it together just to show you that it doesn't matter how exact you are. It doesn't take that long to fix stuff. Just make sure you get those to either be horizontal or vertical, which is usually the easiest, or, you know, I could say perpendicular and do the same thing. So get this basic shape in. The main thing is to get the right number of lines on the sketch. So I've got that. Now I can make sure it's working. Yep. So I can dimension. So from this edge to there, 1.25. Oops. I drew a little too big. Just grab this corner, drag it over. Not a big deal. Sometimes you're like, oh, maybe I should have just done this one first. So it's not as easy to work from small dimensions first. So that way it doesn't happen like that. But either way, doesn't matter. And now I need this one. Oh, ooh, that's a 1/2 inch diameter. But what am I seeing here? Am I seeing the whole diameter? Or am I seeing the radius? I'm seeing the radius. So I'm just going to pick there and bring it out. And because I don't want to do math, I'm going to say 0.5 divided by 2. And then on this one, I'm picked here, 1.5 divided by 2. So in the boxes here, you can do full equations. You can, it's kind of as much math as you want to, you can put it in there. So I can put that in. I'm going to hit finish sketch. And then I'm going to revolve it around there. If I pick on this, it shows me my radius is 1/4, which is a 1/2 inch diameter, and that's 3/4. All right, so now I can go in, create a sketch on this face. Now I can draw that circle, dimension it to be 1, finish, extrude that out, it's 1 inch. Okay, so now I've got that basic thing. Now I need the slot right in the middle. So what's this? It's a broken out section, right? So it's my broken out section showing me that this part is solid, this part is open, so that's that slot there. So what can I do to draw that slot? Where should I draw it? It's all the way through, it's 1/2 inch deep. So a couple things, I could draw it here, or I could draw it, you know, on that plane, going down the middle. Either way, it's probably easier just to draw it here, because that way I don't have to create that and then project the intersection line and everything. So we're just going to create a sketch here. And what's my sketch going to be? It's going to be 2 lines. So just line here, line here, line here, line here. And those lines right now are kind of doing their own thing, right? If I want it to be centered, what's the relationship of those lines? Well, if I look here, they're hitting the circle in the same spot on both sides. That means they're going to be equal length. So if I just say equal and pick them, now they're going to stay centered. So now I can just dimension that for the width of the slot. And then my negative 1/2 inch. And there we go. All right, last one. Ooh, this one's a little different, right? So far, we've been doing things with just square corners in the sketches. And usually you'd want to do that. If you can draw it with a square corner on your sketch, that's better than drawing something with fillets. Even if these were here and these edges were filleted, I would still draw it the same way, and then I'd come back with a place feature and add the fillet on that corner, because I have the overall dimension and I can draw it with square corners. So then you want to draw it with square corners. Adding the fillets into your sketch make things more complicated. So if you can draw it, if you know where that point is, like if these lines extended up and it told me like the point would be here, and the point would be here, and the point would be here, I would draw it sharp corners and then add fillets later. But this one is telling me where my center points are, and kind of the radius of those arcs is making up the size. So I kind of have to use those in the sketch. So let's do that. All right, let's minimize that. All right, so create a sketch, and there. And this is kind of one where I'll maybe turn it a little bit more towards straight, but still not exactly. So where's my origin going to be? What's kind of a point here that's referenced by a lot of things? Should I put my origin here? Here? No, I'll probably put it there, right? And so two things I could do. I could draw just the outline of it. So I could click here and hold to make a tangent arc. Click here and hold to make a tangent arc. Click here and hold to make a tangent arc. So I can do that. It's probably the best thing to do. Or I could draw, you know, 3 circles and then draw lines between them, and then coming back, making those other edges tangent, and then trimming out what I don't need. Either way works. I like this way because it's kind of gets it done at once. I still need to go back and add the tangents to those. There we go. So if I move it, it's moving. Is it moving correctly? No, it's kind of all over the place. I haven't finished constraining it. So I need these 3 arcs to be equal. That one equal. Now I can do that one and that one equal. So it's there. But what did I skip? I didn't make anything on the origin, right? So I want this point here to be halfway between those. So I'm just going to draw a line here. And any line that you're going to use, but it's not going to be that part of the outside, click on it and then click this construction button to make a construction. So that way it doesn't try and use it to create the outside profile of your sketch. So now I can just do midpoint, that line, that point. Now let's look at it. Ooh, now it's looking good, but ooh, this is still not doing what I want it to do. So I'm going to go ahead and add a vertical constraint from that point to that point. Now it's looking a lot better. So now I can do my dimensions. So I'm going to tell it this line, 2 inches. From this line to this point, 1.5 inches. And now here, oh, it's giving me a radius, but I want a diameter. So I'm going to right click and just pick diameter. And I can tell it 1. All right, it's all black. It's good to go. Finish, extrude, 1/4 inch. And there I go. Now I need to do the slot in the middle. So I'm going to create a sketch, pick here, and do I have any options there to do that slot? I could draw a rectangle and then do some fillets, but then I need to know the overall length of it. So that means I need to do a little bit of math. So it'd be 1 inch plus another 1/2 inch, because the radius here and the radius there. But there is a slot tool. So there's a couple options. Do we know the center part of the entire slot? Nope. Do we know the centers of each of the sides? Yep. So I'm going to pick here Click there, go out. Now I can just tell it 1 inch, 1/2 inch, finish, extrude, all the way through, flip. All right, and there is this piece. All right, that's pretty much it. Using those same steps, so keep your sketches simple. Always add your constraints first, based on your design intent, and then working on your dimensions later, and then using good terminations to go all the way through things or to a surface, and kind of the distance is the last option that you want to use. You have to use that on the first sketch, but after that, you can usually say all the way through or go to a face or something like that. Those are better options. All right, talk to you later.